Hello, Ute fans. This is Dan Sorensen with UteZone.com. Welcome to Voices from the Cheap Seats, our new podcast at UteZone, where we're having one-on-one conversations with some of the people and the personalities that have made Utah football what it is today. Today, we welcome our inaugural guest, somebody who I've known for many years, who I am quite fond of, is certainly no stranger to Utah fans. We're welcoming Isaac Asiata, who's now offensive line coach at Weber State. Just for background, if for the young folks in the crowd, Isaac, he signed with Utah as part of the 2011 class. Offensive guard. He played in 45 games as a Ute. He was a 4-year starter, two-time All Pac-12. As a senior, he won the Morris Trophy, which was the award that the Pac-12 gave to the best lineman in the conference, and it was voted for by the players. It's probably my favorite trophy in all of football. And then Isaac, of course, was drafted in the 5th round by the Miami Dolphins after his career was done. He's been a coach since his NFL career. He spent a stint in law enforcement, but football was too much in the blood. We'll talk a little bit about that as well. But we're really excited to have the conversation. Isaac, welcome.
Thanks, Dan. I appreciate it, man. Happy to be here.
Yeah, well, we're really thrilled that you're here and that we're having the conversation. And we're going to be a little bit over the map today. But I think just to kind of kick it off, look, you've had a great career. Football has given you a lot of things. What is it about football that drew you to the sport, and what kept you dedicated as you developed to put yourself in the position to even play for the Utes or play in the NFL?
Yeah, so very early on in my childhood, we didn't have a ton of money. It was just my mom and I have five other siblings, and in order for us, my mom let us know, she worked 2 to 3 jobs throughout my childhood, and the reality of it, she wanted us to go on to get a college degree and then further our education, but she also told us that she's probably not going to be able to pay for it, and so scholarships were going to be it. And obviously my mom wanted it to be an academic scholarship. I was not the academic scholar of my family, but I was definitely the athlete, and baseball was actually my first true love, and the greatest thing that ever happened to me was when a young baseball coach told me that I would never make it in the game of baseball, and so I ended up with football, and it changed my life. There's so many lessons and so many things that I've built my character and my and who I am from the game of football, and how I've raised my kids, the lessons that I've learned, and uh, the adversity you face. There's so many different things that this game has given me and that I've learned from it, and that's kind of what pushed me to go on and continue. Once I figured out that I could actually do this, I could actually play this game at more or higher level than high school. And Matt Asiata, my cousin Matt, and Sean, they were at Utah, and I remember talking to Matt when I was getting recruited about the Asiata legacy at the University of Utah, and that I should carry it on. And it was big time for me, and I've been a fan my whole life, and it was a dream come true to be able to go there. So I was very blessed to play for the University of Utah.
I love that. Look, you commit, you carry on that Asiata legacy with the Utes. What was the harshest lesson that you learned when you stepped foot on campus, maybe stepped on the practice field for the first time? Because there's a huge adjustment that people have no concept of, right?
Yeah. Football has a way of humbling you wherever you are, whatever level you play at. And I had a really successful high school career, and I thought I was a big dog when I got to Utah, and I got humbled really, really fast. And I had to um, kind of put away old accolades, so to speak, from high school, and trust and believe that I still had the tools to do it. But being able to be humbled and to learn more, to expand my football IQ, to get stronger, to get faster, to get bigger. My freshman year, after that year, is kind of when uh, the tools turned. I could have folded and just been like, what, I actually am not cut out for this. But when you have that self belief and you're willing to trust the process, which is such a big thing for the University of Utah football program, is trusting in the process. Some guys come in and they're able to pick it up right away. I think about guys who came in with me, like Harvey Longy and Nate Orchard. Those guys played as true freshmen, those guys were ready to roll, and everybody has their different paths. It's if you're willing to trust that process and stick with it. And so definitely a humbling experience going against Star Lotulelei and James Iono and the Kruger brothers when you're 17, 18 years old, and only made me better. So that's another lesson from the game, is just being humbled in life and being able to pivot and adjust, and whether you fold or you keep going. That's the big part about it.
I love it. Is look, we've been, you and I, we've known each other for a long time. I've been covering the recruiting stuff for more than 20 years at this point. Um, there seems to be a common thread around the things that you just talked about, especially when it comes to mindset. Obviously, if you're getting recruited to play for a P4 school like Utah, there's a threshold of physicality in terms of height, weight, athleticism. Just base level skill levels, those types of things that are happening when you get evaluated. So that's kind of the assumed, but how much of it for the guys that succeed and have careers like you did versus the guys that maybe or maybe even were more talented than you that don't get to where you were able to? How much of that is mentality and mindset, and what do you have to do when you're a player, when you're the guy that's sitting in the locker getting strapped up, right? Like, what do you have to do to make sure that you're consistent with that?
Yeah, I think your mentality and having the right mindset is everything with your career. There's like I said, my freshman year, I was not the player that I ended up being, and that mindset for me, and I talked to Scally back my freshman year, who was uh, big on that mindset. Same thing with Jay Hill, who recruited me out of high school, and Coach Whittingham. Like, being able to understand where you're at, but also trusting. It goes back to that process. So the guys like me who had to redshirt or had to adjust, they weren't necessarily ready when they got there. You have to be willing to trust the process, to have the right mentality that everything that you're doing, all the hard work you're putting in, is only going to get you better. And then the guys who come in that are ready, they have to have the same mindset, because once you're the guy, you have to have a good humbleness about yourself, to where, yeah, I can do this, but I don't have all the answers. I got to continue to get better, continue to get better, continue to own the position that I'm. If I'm in a starting role, if I'm in a backup role, I got to get the starting role. It's always changing, and it's always evolving mentally. But the consistent mentality of, once you think you figured it out, you don't. You haven't. Once do you think you have it all, you don't. It's being humble enough to play with confidence, and once you've kind of honed your technique, your craft, you've got the playbook down, being able to say, or have the confidence in, okay, I know what I'm doing, but I still need to get better every single day. Like, I think about guys like Spencer Fano and Caleb, those two guys who just got drafted. Like, they were big time players coming out of high school, but the best thing about those two kids that set them apart from so many other guys is their self-awareness, to know that, yes, I have a good set of tools, yes, I'm gifted athletically, physically, but I still need to keep working. It's the mindset of, you could be an all conference player, you can be an all American player, you could be a scout team player. As long as your mentality is, I need to continue to get better, no matter what. That's the key that separates the guys who just kind of float through, and the guys who get better, the guys who succeed, the guys who have great careers. So that mentality piece is everything in this game.
I love that. When you look back at your playing days at Utah, are there any memories that come to mind or that stand out that are exceptionally special?
Um, oh man, there's a lot. Winning the Morris Trophy was a big deal. Um, if I could pick two, number one would be the Morris. I remember I wrote that goal down. I didn't even know what the Morris Trophy was when I first got to Utah. And then after my freshman year, and I didn't have the year, I was kind of crushed and didn't think that I could do it. I set a lot of big goals, and I wrote it down on a 3x5 card that I would win the Morris Trophy before I left. And I still have that card. I kept it all throughout college, and that was such a big moment for me. I remember I was in the training room getting treatment on on my knee, and then all of a sudden my phone was just blowing up, and I was like, "What happened?" And then Coach Harding came in the training room and told me that I had been selected to win the Morris Trophy, which was a big accomplishment for me. And like you, I love that. That's, to me, that's the best award in college football, because it's the only award in college football that your opponents or your peers, the guys you play against and that you uh, prepare for all year long, play against all game long. They said that you were the best out of everybody that they played against, and that award was big for me. I also, um, I think that 2012, 2013, when we went back to back 5 and 7 years, that 2014 year, I remember that off season, all the spring ball, all the summer, all the fall camp, just you could feel the shift and the momentum in the program during that time. And I feel as if you weren't there, if you weren't a part of like the players, the coaching staff, there was a shift, because it felt like Utah football was kind of in a downward climb and or decline, and we were not going to be this great program that I knew that we were. And uh, once the players started taking ownership and responsibility for their individual roles, and you could feel the shift in the program, and it kind of catapulted it from this back-to-back 5 and 7 year to what the program is now. Having gone 3 years in a row with finally going back to bowl games, and having winning records, and changing the trajectory of the program. I think that 2014 year was such a big role, having gone to Michigan and winning in the Big House, and beating UCLA at UCLA, all those big time games that year. That year for me was special, just because it was kind of a make or break. And I remember Coach Witt and all the coaches and the players kind of circling the wagons, talking about how you know it's going to be up to the guys in the room who were in the meeting room at that time to decide the fate of the program. And it was such a big year. I think that kind of gets overlooked by some, because that was a pivotal changing moment for the program to set us up to be successful, to win recruiting battles, to get the right guys in, to kind of put the program back on a map and on a bigger stage, to set up for they won those back-to-back Pac-12 championships. I think that 14 year was special because I was a part of it. So
I love that. And it's funny, you obviously that set the stage for everything to come, and to be able to turn that around. You talked about, feeling that there's a turning there. And I'm curious, look, being around the program for as long as I have, there are certain years where, especially fall camp, you're talking to guys in fall camp, and there's just something in the air. There's some sort of electricity that it's going to be a good season. Um, do you do you feel that too when you're a player or when you're a coach, or is there always that kind of optimism, because you're a high performing athlete, so you think you can do anything and everything? Like, what does that look like from the inside? And can you tell that the team is going to be special before a single snap?
yeah, as a player, when I was going through that time, if we talk about 2014 specifically, it was more so just the confidence that we had, not cockiness, but the confidence that we had in ourselves, but also each other. And I think about that 2014 O line, and we had Sam Tevi on that line. We had JJ Dillman, CLC Iono, CJ Protasi, Hiva Lutui, myself, Leko. Like, we had guys who were good players, but we were, in every frame of this, we're not the same kind of caliber of the Spencer Fanos or the Caleb Lomus of these guys who they were getting later on. We were a good group, but we were not, um, these world class. We weren't the UCLA's and the USC's during the time, but we were. Our confidence was so high in ourselves, but also as a team. And the difference between the 12 and 13 to 14 year was 14. I felt the team was a lot closer. Everybody had bought in. Everybody was sick of of losing. Everybody was kind of just taking responsibility for their own roles and each other. And once you have a team that is that close, it's easy to get that confidence through the roof. And I think that feeling that you're talking about uh, goes hand in hand with how confident, how high of a confidence level the team is playing with in general. I mean, even though we didn't win the championship that year, we just felt that it was still going to be a really special year. And um, it starts with, like I said, that confidence in your own ability as a player. But then, I knew that the rest of the guys in the O line, the guys in the D line, the skill players, and everybody was still going to do their job because it meant so much to them, but also they were willing to do it for me, for the other guy, for everybody else on the team, and that no matter what, I could play with a high confidence because I trusted everybody on the team. And once you get that chemistry, that culture, that's when you can start to feel that buzz. And I think there is, part of it is you play with confidence anyway, just because you're at a P4 program or a D1 level, but instilling the confidence is what I believe that feeling really is.
I love it. You mentioned some of the guys on that 2014 offensive line. I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about that 2016 offensive line. Certainly, up until last year, it was easily the best offensive line that's ever played at Utah. So starting left tackle was Garrett Bowles. You were right next to him. Of course, Garrett was a first-round draft pick. You were a fifth-round draft pick. J.J. Dielman was your starter, a 3-year starter, 31 consecutive starts. He was drafted in the fifth round. Leka Uhatafe at right guard, who undrafted, but he definitely spent time on NFL rosters. And then, of course, Sam Tevi, also drafted in the sixth round, spent a good amount of time and was a starter at the NFL level. So amazing talent along that starting five. You had this team last year where where you were a coach, and they had 7,000 starts between the five of them, and you've got your 2 first-round draft picks on the ends, and your center is a guy that's got a great shot for an NFL roster. And which line was better? Is last year's the best offensive line in Utah football history, or is 2016 still the one?
I joked with those guys last year. I said, unless you guys get 5 guys drafted in this draft class, you guys are in the best. But having played in the 16 line and then coached these guys last year were above and beyond better than us in 16. They were way smarter football players. Their IQ was really good. They were way more athletic. They, as a whole unit, they were head and shoulders better than us. And I'd like to, be biased and say that it was us in 16, but these guys last year, man, they were something special. It was um, the first time in my entire career where you could easily just say, "Hey, let's put it on the O line," and then it was going to be successful. And we had moments like that throughout the 16 year, and we knew that we were a really good line then, but it was fun to be a part of a line that I'm not playing on, but coaching that. Um, I had so much confidence in these guys winning their one-on-one battles, working together as a 5-man unit, and playing physical and being able to do everything that we asked of them. Those guys last year were really, really special.
I love that. It probably carries along to my next question is, look, you had your career, you spent your time in the NFL, you left football, you were in law enforcement for a while, and then came back to coaching. So I'd love to hear, why was it, like, how did you know that coaching was the thing, and what was the biggest transition that you had to make in terms of whether it's mentality or the way that you worked or just your approach to certain things, because you weren't the guy doing it, you were trying to encourage others to. I'd love to hear about that.
Yeah, I've been pretty open about you know what went into my retirement. I still do believe that I could be playing to this day. I retired back in 2019 for mental health issues. I was, I guess a trigger warning for people. I was, very suicidal. I was not happy with playing the game. I loved football for so long, and it is such a harsh reality to work for something for so long, and then you absolutely hate it every day of your life. And it had nothing to do with other than that I just did not love the game. And this game, if you don't love it, if you're not obsessed with developing and getting better and playing this game, uh, it is not for you, especially at the NFL level. And So when I retired, um, I made a promise with my wife that I would always do a job that I loved and something that was fulfilling to me, something that I looked forward to doing every single day. That meant a lot. I actually had a bunch of different sales jobs when I retired that, I could have made some really good money, but my wife has been great all along throughout our marriage of kind of just grounding me and reminding me of, kind of that promise that I didn't want to do anything that I didn't love. And I knew I wouldn't love sitting in an office and making sales calls and doing all that. And so a buddy of mine took me on a ride along when I was a cop, when he was a cop, and I loved it. It was such a great kind of transition from playing offensive line where you're the protector, you're kind of the enforcer, the bodyguard, and uh, being that protector um, in a community. That's what drew me to law enforcement, and I loved serving people. I loved uh, being there for people when their life has just been turned upside down, and I loved that career. It was such a great career path for me to kind of set me up for coaching, and mind you, I absolutely I didn't watch any football for about 3-4 years after I um, retired from the NFL. I was so burnt out from football, and I hated it, and I always wanted to get into coaching, but again, I was trying to step away from the game completely. And um, when I got the phone call from Coach Harding to come be his GA back in 2023, um, I really didn't want to do it, and I felt um, I was kind of at a crossroads because I loved law enforcement. I had 3 kids at the time, and I grew up without a dad, and in law enforcement, you think you're bulletproof, but I didn't want my kids to grow up without their dad. And I was at that crossroads where I had to make a decision on whether I wanted to um, stay in law enforcement or go and find something else. And football wasn't really that something else, but I again was kind of faced with, being a police officer is really hard. Those guys out on the road, and I was dealing with those same mental battles and you know I guess suicidal thoughts as a cop. And I knew that this was, I'm a very religious person, and I knew that this didn't come up. This GA job didn't come up just as a coincidence. It came up at the perfect time, and I jumped at it, especially to go back to my alma mater and to coach under, Coach Whittingham and Coach Harding, especially as his assistant. And um, big time decision for me, and I don't regret uh, a single moment. It has been a great opportunity for me, a life changing opportunity for my family, and I found that love that I had all my life for this game through coaching, through um, seeing the kids sit in the same seats that I sat in, go through the same struggles as college athletes, and um, second guessing themselves, facing self doubts, and having success and celebrating those little victories with them along the way. It's been such a blessing for me to find my love back into this game through the coaching position.
I love that. Well, and look, and you've talked a couple of times about some of the mental health issues, and I think it's a great thing to bring up. People, they look at, and especially in football, they look at football players, and because they're wearing the gear and they're wearing the helmet, so you don't always remember that there's a human underneath all of that stuff, right? And there are pressures there, and I know that you are not alone in some of those struggles, and frankly, I've absolutely been there too. And so I love that you're open about that. When you think about, those challenges that you've had to overcome, how does that arm you to help the guys that you're in charge of coaching and help them as they're kind of going through either similar struggles or different, but keeping them in a really healthy place while staying competitive and that sort of thing?
Yeah, it's definitely a balance, especially I've always felt that uh, I've always had a role mentoring people some way, some form, even before coaching. And um, when I got into coaching, I started to see it on all. It was kind of weird seeing all the different emotions, all the different phases, all the different thoughts that I had throughout my whole career manifest itself in every single different O lineman that I coached, both at Utah and now here at Weber State. And you see it, you can see the look in kids' eyes, and it is why it's also so important for me as a coach to build relationships. I felt like early on in my career, before Coach Harding there, I didn't really have a relationship with my position coach, that it was I felt more like it was just a means to an end. Like if I wasn't successful for the coach to keep his job and to make money, then I was expendable. Which there is some, um, I guess, realities to that. But it's the coaches who are willing to be a player's coach, and they're willing to build a certain relationship and build a certain bond with guys, and um, get to know them more than just the number and just the, just the face. That's when you're truly invested in your guys. That's when you can start to see, the self-doubts. You can see the difference in their mood, the difference in their eyes. Like, I can tell when my guys in my room right now, something's going on outside of football, because I've been able to build that relationship. And the balancing act is being able to push those guys and coach them hard, but also understand that, they're going through something. It's, with my players now, and even the guys at Utah, like, if they were going through something outside of football, you're more understanding. You're more, you don't really get lax on the expectation. The expectation is always there. The standard's always the standard, but it's understanding that, hey, this kid is going through something. I'm going to push him as much as I can, but I don't want to break him. And uh, that kid, he could be like that for a week, and then he's back on track the following week. It's not giving up on your guys when they're going through things, and being an asset or somebody that they can confide in, or lean on when they're going through those hard times, and getting them through it. For me, it's always checking on my guys, meeting on with them one-on-one, making sure that I'm in tune with their personal lives and what's going on off the field, so that I can get the most of them while they're here.
I love that, and I love that approach. I think it's perfect. It aligns with my worldview. So I love that. That's a thing, and it was clear that that's what Coach Harding did. And look, Coach Harding, I have nothing but amazing things to say about him. He's one of the best in the business, and he's where he's at because he's earned it. And I love that, and I love that you've got that relationship with had it and have it. I want to shift gears a little bit. Look, I know that you're not in the building anymore. You're focused on Weber. You've got your job, but this is an interesting transition year for Utah and their offensive line. And a lot of these guys: Keith Olson, Al Harrison, Zerway Williams, Toa Moiai, Roger Alderman. These guys they were waiting in the wings last year. A lot of them played a lot of snaps, and they did well while they were in there. But it's not necessarily the same thing as playing starter snaps and that sort of thing. Based on what you know of these guys, especially the upperclassmen that are returning from last year, and obviously you weren't in spring football, so I'm not expecting like picture perfect analysis. But what should people expect out of these guys, especially guys like Keith or Toa that played a lot of snaps last year?
Yeah, so I do anticipate, those two guys kind of being the vets of the room, even though all those guys have been there for some time now. Big Al's been there for forever. I remember Big Al coming by practices when I played, so I've known Al for a long time. But those kids are the epitome of team and selflessness. Those guys have, they've wanted those roles. They wanted to be the starter. They wanted to play the snaps. They wanted to be the guy for so long. But they embraced and understood that their role as a backup, and being ready to go into a game, at a moment's notice. They understood the importance of that role, and they embraced it. And uh, they were great teammates, and great at developing themselves, but also pushing the guys that we had in the room last year. I think a great example is when, twice last year, a few times last year, we had Jaron was out when we played Cal Poly, and then Big Al stepped up big, and little to no drop off. And the same thing in the bowl game with Moko. Moko got hurt. I think it was like the first or second series, and before we even realized that Moko was out, Roger ran in, and Roger had one hell of a game, probably his best game of his whole career. And so, those guys have paid their dues, and they've trusted the process. And now that it's going to be their time, I'm very confident in those guys. They're smart players, they're physical players. Uh, they're really, really talented group of guys that have been kind of training their whole careers and their whole college careers for this moment. And I know it means a lot to them, and I know that they're going to be successful and continue to carry the O Block torch that as they have been over the years.
I love it. What are your thoughts on Coach Scally and Coach Gross as they're kind of stepping into these new roles? And obviously, I'm certain there are a few things they don't know what they don't know. But how well equipped do you think those two are to take on what they're trying to do?
Yeah, Scally. I knew Scally was going to be uh, a phenomenal head coach. Even I always thought that before he was named the head coach in waiting, and then eventually the head coach, that I always knew Scally would be a guy that could lead that program, kind of take it to new heights. Um, and he is the ultimate players coach. I know the guys that they love him, the coaching staff love him. I loved him. He's a great guy, and he's going to be very successful in that role. He embodies Utah football. He embodies that process. He embodies being a Utah man and being a U boy. He is everything with that program, and I know it means a lot to him because he has gone through as a player, as a coach, and then now he's going to be the head coach. He's going to be very successful, and I'm excited for Coach Gross. And I've had a good relationship with him since I played, and then throughout the NFL, and with him being up at Fruitland and coaching. He's came by before, and he's making the adjustment from high school to college, but he is a phenomenal football coach. The transition from high school to college ball is not an easy one, but I know that Jordan, how uh, the wealth of football knowledge that he has, being a technician, having done it at every single level, having coached at the high school level, and understanding the development piece, which is easy to lose as a coach, is that development piece. He knows what it looks like. He knows how to develop guys, and I'm excited for him. Jordan's a great guy, and I have no doubt that he's going to be successful in his coaching career, but especially at Utah.
Love it. Shifting gears, what are you most excited about in your role at Weber?
Yeah, it's been fun to finally take the reins. I was mentored by, in my opinion, the best offensive line coach in college football, and in Jim Harding. And having played under him, coached under him, he molded me into a great mentoree, and now a great offensive line coach. And I'm looking forward to bringing that same mentality that we've had in that offensive line room since he got there, and being physical, being leaders, being great teammates, and being students of the game. My guys, I love the group of guys that I have right now at Weber, because they have bought into everything that I've asked them to do. Everything from academics to their routines of getting ready for practice, and taking care of their bodies, their work ethic. They've bought into me as a coach, and I'm very grateful for my guys, and I'm looking forward to developing them. I think one of the most satisfying things as a coach is when you're working with your guys, developing them, and they're having difficulties, whether it's with an assignment, whether with it's a technique, or something that they're struggling. And once you see them, the excitement, the confidence, the look on their face when they finally get it, that is so satisfying to me, to for them to get those moments where they've worked so hard at something and they're able to finally do it, or finally execute it, or their wins, and kind of shoring them up when they're going through their lows of the struggles of ball. Like, there's the development piece for me is big, and I'm just excited to be here to kind of get the program back to what it was like when Jay was here, and get it back to a winning tradition like they have here at Weber State.
Love it. All right, Isaac, I got one more question for you. Then I'm gonna cut you loose, let you go. Look, you've been a Utah player, you've been an NFL player, you've been a Utah coach as a GA. Now you're offensive line coach at Weber State. It's a pretty incredible journey, especially in talking about where you came from, and how you grew up and how you landed into football. When your football journey it's all said and done, what do you hope that your personal legacy is?
For me, I just hope, as a coach, and especially as a player, I always wanted to be the guy that defensive linemen they were afraid to play, because this guy was going to uh, battle with me for 60 minutes and kind of just kick me into the dirt. But as a coach, I hope my legacy is that my guys that I coach, that they feel that I develop them not only into great players but great young men, to great fathers, great husbands. That's so important to me. There's so many things that I learned throughout my life that has shaped me and molded me into the person that I am, that's come from this game. I would not be where I am, or who I am, without this game. And for my guys to, when they're done being coached by me, to always remember that, at the end of the day, they were loved by a coach who cared about them way more than they would ever know. For me, that's the most important thing. And I obviously want to be successful, and go coach a long career, go to power four level, go coach and do all those things. But it's always been about the guys for me. It's always been about making sure that my guys are taken care of, that they're successful, that after they're done being coached by me, and they hang up their cleats and they're done with football, that they were coached by a guy who cared about them and prepared them for the life to come. The longest stretch of their life, and being husbands, being fathers, being great young men, and members in the community. And so that would be great for me. As long as I knew my guys were on to do those things, I'm happy.
I love it. Fantastic. Well, Isaac, thank you very much for joining me today. It's amazing to see you. It was one of my favorite things was covering you back in the day. I generally see you on the field and we do the bro hug, and you, of course, had just played. And so I'd be dripping with sweat after, because you were dripping with sweat. So that was always fun for me. I tell my wife about that and she just giggles. So, but no, it's good to see you. I wish you nothing but success at Weber this year. And thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks, bro. I appreciate it.